Hey everyone, it's Colin from DIY Guy. Thanks for checking out today's video on 5 things I plan to improve about my garden next growing season. So we're wrapping up the summer of 2022 and trying to figure out what we can do better next year. So here we go. Number 1, first off, you may have checked out my earlier video on how to build a garden fence with just T-posts and bird netting. The bird netting is super cheap, and I will say it worked like a charm. I didn't have any pest problems except the one time where bunnies got into my garden, which I'm not even mad about that. But I did have one big problem with it, and that is that obviously it's an eyesore. You can see I had quite a weed and grass problem around the perimeter of the fence, and that's because the bird netting is too fragile to weed eat against. I'll just shred the netting, which I did a couple times. There's my multiple zip tie patch job where I hit it with a weed eater. Also, I wasn't just gonna spray Roundup around the edge because 1, Roundup sucks, and 2, it's way too close to my garden to do that. So next year, to fix this problem, I'll do one of 2 things. I'll either go ahead and splurge and pay like $100 or $200 to get some heavy duty cattle wire, then I can weed eat around that without tearing it up. Or if I want to stay cheap, then I'll go ahead and rip out this old netting, put a thick layer of mulch around the perimeter of the garden, and then I'll buy new bird netting and put that up over the mulch. That way, hopefully the mulch will keep out a lot of those weeds. Moving on, we've got number 2, and that is the drip irrigation. So worst mistake ever was buying irrigation in the middle of summer when your garden's already established, because it took me about 3 hours to work the drip tubing around all my plants. Whereas it would have been super easy if I bought it at the beginning of the growing season, laid out all my irrigation, and then planted next to each of the drip holes. All right, number 3 is another irrigation issue, and the thing I would change is adding a shutoff valve between my blackberries and my veggie garden. So if the blackberries are well mulched, they don't need near as much water as the veggie garden. Now the problem I had was that I couldn't water the veggie garden without watering the blackberries. So if I don't want to water the veggie garden by hand, I had to risk overwatering blackberries. So definitely that shutoff valve would have been a huge help. Number 4, we've got building a stronger pole bean trellis, because my 1x2 lumber did not like the weight of the pole beans. So it just split right in half, and it's only held together because the beans are so viney. When all these are wet, they probably weigh close to 30 or 35 pounds. And then plus the wood wasn't protected from the elements at all, so it kind of just softened and fell apart. Okay, last one is number 5, and that is to keep in mind the heights of your plants before you plant them in your garden. I know that's super obvious, but I messed it up this year. I planted a pole bean trellis about 6 feet high, down about a third of the way through my garden, and it shaded 15 square feet of my garden that I couldn't use for the rest of the year. My thought was that I'll grow a trellis and have some shade for like lettuce and stuff that doesn't like the heat as much, but it turns out the shade worked too well, and not a single thing, not even weeds, grew in that little patch of the garden. So Captain Obvious tip, make sure you just know where the sun is and what's going to be shaded and how much shade before you actually plant it. Well, there are the 5 things I hope to improve about my garden next year. Hopefully you got something out of this video, maybe learn from some of the mistakes I made. But with that, keep growing yourself, and I'll catch you in the next one.